Welcome back, everyone, to the GDFL podcast hosted by yours truly, Andrew Korn. This week's going to be a solo show. Put a message out in the group, me, no one really responded to it. And this podcast serves multiple benefits. I actually do use it in my personal life a little bit, or more so in my career, as a way to get myself more comfortable with public speaking. And like, I go through reports all the time, like with my job. And I'm trying to avoid using filler words and maybe speaking at a slower rate. So I wanted to still get a podcast out, even if it's by myself. I can talk about this league plenty. So figured, let's still do it. Let's get this thing done. And again, a lot of it's a challenge for myself of, okay, let's make sure I'm doing something that I enjoy too. Because I really do enjoy putting out these podcasts for you guys. Hope you enjoy listening to them as well. So looking at this first week, no, this is not first week. This is week two with our second week of action in the GDFL season. We had a rematch of our top two seeds where I beat Mark about 126 to 88. Stun beat Trevor in a barn burner, 143 and a half to 141. Levi with an upset over Shrew of 114 to 99. Sokol, our top scorer of the week, beat Jake in the Battle of the Jakes, 165 to 143. Chaz knocked off Beans 124 to 110. And last, we have Ryan beating Logan 117 to 62. I'm going to talk a little bit about each matchup, at least in mine with Marks. I think the thing that I'm most interested in or concerned with maybe moving forward is the play of JJ McCarthy. Other than that fourth quarter against the Bears, he has not looked very good. And so we'll see what that means for Justin Jefferson this season. And I still think he's a top two receiver in the NFL, at least from a talent perspective. But we'll have to see how that translates into fantasy points for the season. We'll talk more about JJ's injury later. The other talking point I wanted to bring up was Devontae Smith on the Eagles. Going into the season, I thought to myself, there's no way the Eagles are more run heavy than they were last year. I mean, last year they were running the ball at a rate that hadn't been seen historically in a very long time. And somehow through the first 2 weeks of the season so far, they're running the ball even more. So there's that. I mean, overall, I think there's lots of like with what my team had done this week. There's nothing too flashy. I mean, if you look at it up here, if you're watching on YouTube, I was about 12 points under my projection, but I also didn't score that many touchdowns as a team. So I think that there's some regression there with some of those players. Looking at Mark, Mark was under his projection by about 50. So what exactly is that 55? 12 plus 43. Yeah, about 55. And what went wrong for Mark? Uh, Other than Gibbs and Mahomes, every player in his starting lineup scored less than 10 points. It certainly was a lucky week for this one to be the one I faced Mark, as this was a pretty big disaster for him. I think the most notable one was Derrick Henry only scoring 2 points after dropping about 30 last week. And then the other one was starting Michael Penix over Tua and Mac Jones, where Penix only scored 5 points, and both Tua and Mac Jones scored around 20. And I think the other thing to note is his two best flex options for this week, again, not named Gibbs, were sitting on his bench. We have Devontae Adams and Deebo Samuel. Then the other thing I'm going to say that's noteworthy is Mark Andrews. I think for the second week in a row, has scored about 1 point and hasn't really been targeted by Lamar. So I really wouldn't be shocked if it's Harold Fannin time for Mark here in the near future. We'll have to see what he does in the future weeks. Looking at the next matchup with Stun and Trevor. Again, Stun edged out a win by about 2.5 points. I thought going into Monday night, like Trevor had a pretty healthy percentage odds of winning. I think it was like 70-30. Uh, Unfortunately for Trevor, Genty only scored about 6 points. I think that's all he had. Yeah, and Bucky Irving had 15, which is a fine performance for Monday Night Football. But overall, I mean, I don't think Trevor can be too upset about scoring 141 points. Same with Stunner scoring 143. Brian Thomas had another disappointing week. It seems like he's got a case of the yips a little bit with getting hit. I mean, there's a few clips out there on social media of him not going after a quote unquote hospital ball thrown by T-Law. And so it'll be interesting to see what Trevor does with Brian Thomas. But I mean, Javonte Williams and James Cook both popped off again, had multiple touchdowns, or had a touchdown each, maybe. They both had a pretty good week. I'm really interested to see what Stun's going to be doing with the starting lineup in the near future. I mean, his team is very deep. I wonder if that means that potentially Brian Thomas gets benched, because it looks like Jordan Mason might be stepping into a bell cow role soon. He also has Ridley, Waddle, Pickens, Mooney, Cedric Tillman all sitting on his bench. So I think Stun's going to have some. I mean, that's almost a starting lineup of people I just named that could be on his starting lineup on his bench. I don't really know what I'm trying to say with that. Basically, Stun's gonna have some tough lineup decisions here in the near future, I think. And then, yeah, looking at Trevor's team, nothing real noteworthy here. Alec Eilmaner got the start for him, scored a touchdown, so that's pretty good for Trevor. Stafford had a solid game. J.K. Dobbins was solid. Malik Neighbors popped off, had 33 points. He only got 11 out of Josh Allen, so I think that was really the big difference maker for Trevor. But I don't think that's anything to be upset about scoring 141 points in week two, even if it results in a loss. Okay, the next matchup on here I'm going to talk about is Shrew and Levi. And Levi was talking some shit in the group me saying you lost to May. I mean, Shrew was favored to win this by almost 40 points. So what went wrong for Shrew? Pretty similar situation to Mark, where Shrew's best flex, Puka, had a great game, but then everyone else in his flex position scored less than 10 points. And then Caleb scored 17, which is fine. Stroud scored 15, which is okay, I guess. For the most part, and yeah, everyone in Shrew's starting lineup scored not even just like less than 10. His second best flex was Pollard with 9, and then it's Tyrone Tracy with 7. Did leave Jawan Jennings and Tucker Kraft on the bench, which is a little painful for him because starting one of them probably gets him the win. So this is another team where I'm curious to see if he finds a spot for either of those two guys in the upcoming weeks, perhaps over starting like Tyrone Tracy or Hollywood Brown. We'll see what Shrew does here in the near future. And for Levi picked up a win. I know him and Logan have a win to see who's going to win the most games this year because both see themselves at the bottom of the league. Ramondre Stevenson had a good game for Levi, and because he had a good game, Levi had shipped him off in a trade we'll talk about later. I joke, of course, but yeah, Bo Nix had a solid game. Zay Flowers was fine. Drake May had a really good game. Uh, yeah, there's really not a ton to say about this from Levi's side, other than he did get a win and he won't get skunked in the win column this year. Okay, and now we have our team of the week, Sokol. Sokol had the top quarterback, running back, and wide receiver this week with Goff, Jonathan Taylor, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those three combined for almost 100 points, which is going to be very difficult for any team to overcome. ETN had a good game. Bryce Young attempted 55 passes. It looks like I'm looking at the box score now and put up 21 fantasy points. Sokol had a good week. I know his team didn't have a great week one, but this was a very nice way for his team to bounce back. Also, it was nice to see the Lions bounce back since his team is very centered around that Lions duo in the stack. Looking at Jake's team, Jake put up 143 points in the loss. That's a tough loss to take when you're the second leading or third leading scorer from the week. Uh, just how it goes in fantasy football. Jamar Chase popped off for him. He started Troy Franklin, and Troy Franklin put up a 20 piece. Now, something I will say is it feels like Jake always hits all the right buttons in a starting lineup. Like I'm looking at his lineup this week. He started Troy Franklin, Trey Tucker, and Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson scored 13. Troy Franklin scored 20. Trey Tucker scored 3.5. So Trey Tucker might have busted a little bit, but I mean, kudos for him for even having the balls to start him. I mean, his other options would have been like Tyquan Thornton, Cup, Scatabo maybe. No, Scatabo might be the running back moving forward in New York with him seemingly out rushing Tracy this week. So that's something to keep an eye on. And also with Jake, Daniel Jones is might be back as a fantasy relevant quarterback. I mean, the Colts have a pretty good ecosystem of skilled players around him. And Shane Steichen was a pretty good offensive coordinator with the Eagles. Perhaps this offense fits his skill set pretty well. And Daniel Jones might be in for a bigger fantasy year than we were expecting. So I know I was initially low on Jake's team going into the season, but Jake like genuinely pushes the right buttons all the time. I think luck eventually will go his way into the win column. Jake's team is going to be sneaky. We'll see how the bye weeks test his depth, but there's something there could be something here. Okay, the next one we have Beans and Chaz. Chaz won 124 to 109. So the story with Beans this week, uh, really the one thing, I mean, Fields got injured, left early with concussion, and even before he left with his concussion, he wasn't playing well at all. It's kind of the roller coaster that is Justin Fields. You live with the highs and you live with the lows if you put him in your starting lineup. While I did criticize him before the year of having Rashid Shaheed and Nick Chubb in his starting lineup as his low end flexes, they were both solid this week and both have been fine to start the season. So maybe Beans will be able to keep him out there, keep him out on the field as long as they stay healthy. Yeah, Beans is I don't think in too bad of a spot here. Like again, his team didn't have a great week, but I think a lot of it was he just had some down performances from Fields, Sutton, Chase Brown, McLaurin, all guys that I expect to bounce back. And for Chaz, the big thing of note with his team this week was Geno Smith only scoring 3 points in that game against the Chargers when you had Russ on his bench with a 30 piece and then Darnold on his bench with 16. It might be tough for him to pick which starting quarterback of those three to start each week alongside Baker because you just really never know which one's going to pop off. Kenneth Walker had a huge bounce back this week. CeeDee Lamb and CMC did their things. Jalen Warren's still off to a pretty good start this season in terms of fantasy points. I'm interested to see if he'll start Wan'Dale Robinson after his big game, or if that's just something that Chaz views more as a flash in the pan. But Wan'Dale Robinson in the 2 week sample is wide receiver 9, according to Sleeper. Again, I wouldn't read too much into who the top receivers are at this point of the year, though. I'm pretty sure I saw last year, what was it, week one? I saw a tweet. It was like Jaden Reed, Keenan Allen, and some other receiver that finished out the side of the top 50 were all top three receivers. Or it might have been like Alec Pierce, maybe, were all the top receivers after a few weeks. Jamar Chase, and AJ Brown, Drake London, McLaurin, like a whole bunch of top 10 receivers last year were in the like wide receiver like 30 to 70. So again, very small sample size at this point. I wouldn't read too much into it. But you never know some of these guys. Some of these guys might have legitimate breakouts this year. Which leads me to the last matchup of Ryan versus Logan. Ryan pretty much doubled up Logan in this one. Adunze had another big game. Adunze is off to a really good start this year. He's currently the wide receiver 4, according to Sleeper. He has 3 touchdowns so far. So perhaps there's some touchdown regression to come. But I mean, Odunze's looked the part. And I wasn't able to watch the Lions game this past Saturday or Sunday. I was mostly listening to it on the radio. But I mean, it sounded like they were calling Odunze's name quite a bit in the game. Um, maybe Ryan found something there with him. His running mate, DeAndre Swift. I know Ryan loves his Bears. Those two contributed to scoring about 40 of Ryan's points. Uh, Keon Coleman came back to earth a little bit after his monster week one, only had 4 points. I think the thing I want to comment on Ryan's team is the team's going to live and die with the Bears and Chargers offenses. I mean, with Hampton, Keenan Allen, Quinn Johnston being all in the Chargers, Odunze and Swift on the Bears. I mean, that's 5 of his top like 8-ish flex plays. all on one team. So if those teams ever have a bad week, Ryan might be in for a bad week. Um, yeah, there's a few injuries on Ryan's team, but I'm going to be talking about that later. A special segment for this week is going to be an injury roundtable. Then for Logan, I mean, putting up 62, not good. But again, Logan's in for a bit of a tank year this year. I mean, he started Kenneth Gainwell, Kate Otten, Ray McLeod. Some real hard-hitting names here in Logan's lineup. And yeah, he had Love in his super flex, so then couldn't really take Purdy out of his quarterback slots. He doesn't have any other ones. So hopefully he'll fix that in the future, take Purdy out. I mean, it wouldn't have affected this matchup. But yeah, Logan's in tank mode. I mean, this team's not going to win very many games, if any. So my hope for him is that he's just like competitive in some of them. So that's a quick recap. Hey, I don't even think that was that quick because I went deeper into each of these games than I thought. Anywho, recap of this past week's matchups. Now, quick look at the standings. The three teams at the top right now are Chaz in first, Ryan in second, and I'm in third. And then in fourth, we have Trevor. Fifth is Sean. Sixth is Sokol. So that would be the playoff teams as of now. In seventh, we have Beans. Eight is Shrew. Nine is Levi. And then 10th is Jake, 11th is Mark, and Logan is 12th. So for me, the biggest surprise is Mark being in 11th at this point of the season. If you look at his max points, it's really not even all that bad. It's just his lineup efficiency looks like it's at about 66% so far to start the year. So Mark needs to be setting some better lineups out here. The other thing that's noteworthy when I've looked at the standings is Trevor's our leading scorer, but does have a loss because he lost by two to Stun this week. And then Jake is third in points, but is 0-2 because he has the highest points against in the league by about 20 or 15 right now behind Sokol. So there could be some better days ahead. Uh, Looking at mine, I have the lowest points against right now. My points four is not great. Wins are wins, though. Not going to apologize for winning. I did not update the draft order. I'm just gonna skip over that then. Looking at the trades of that happened this past week, there's really only one that came in. I think it was yesterday. Levi sent Rondre Stevenson to Trevor for Marvin Mims in a 2026 fourth. So Levi's shipping off anyone on his team older than 25. If you're listening to this, don't look at Levi's team. I want you to guess how many players on his team Levi currently has that are older than 25. I know the answer. I was kind of shocked when I saw it. Um, we'll see if that changes in the upcoming weeks. Yeah. Leave your guesses in the comments below. Let's see what you think of Levi's average age. But yeah, Levi gets Marvin Mims. He gets that stack with Bo Nix. I think Mims is part of that like boom bust archetype at receiver. And I think that's something that could, like again, you live with the high weeks and you live with the low ones with a player like Mims if he's going to be in a starting lineup. Then Ramondre, I mean, he could be plugged in as Trevor's last flex for the time being. I'm not entirely sure what Trevor's going to do, but at the very least, Ramondre's going to be a solid bench piece for the foreseeable future. And then taking a look at our upcoming matchups, we have a battle of the Andrews. We have me versus Shrew. We have a pretty big matchup between Stun and Sokol. We have a battle between the Frankfurt boys and Levi and Ryan. We have Beans versus Trevor, a battle of our two last place teams, and Logan versus Mark. And then we have Chaz versus Jake. So looking across the league, a couple matchups stand out. I mean, I think Mark, I mean, it's pretty much a must win for Mark. If he loses to Logan, that's going to raise some serious red flags. I think Ryan's in a spot against Levi where he probably should win, but you never know. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Jake is also in a bit of a must win. I mean, it looks like Chaz's projection is about 20 points higher right now. We'll see if Chaz is able to keep the winning streak going, beat Jake. Yeah. I think there's a lot of good matchups on the slate for this week. I mean, I really do think that there's 10-ish teams that could realistically have a shot at the playoffs this year. So it'll be fun to watch that unfold over the next few weeks. And so the special segment I'm doing, as I pretty sure I alluded to earlier, is a 2025 injury report. We've had a lot this in week two, especially at the quarterback position. I'm going to break down about how I think that's going to impact the league. So the big one was Joe Burrow being ruled out for 3 months after having turf toe. That's going to require surgery. I think he had like multiple torn ligaments in one of his toes, was what I read. That pretty much knocks him out for just about the entire fantasy regular season. Maybe he'll come back towards the end of the season. But I imagine if the Bengals season isn't going well, he's just going to be shut down the rest of the season. Massive blow for Ryan, obviously. Burrow was one of his pillars of his team. Not having him at quarterback is going to be pretty detrimental moving forward. He does have his handcuff in Jake Browning. And Jake Browning was a viable starting quarterback in the 2023 season, the last time Burrow was out for the season. So he might have something there with Jake Browning. We'll just have to see. But yeah, I think that also impacts Jake a little bit with Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase did pop off this week with mostly Browning at quarterback. Does that continue? We'll have to see. The one who might be, other than Ryan directly, Beans might be impacted with T. Higgins too. I imagine T. Higgins might take a bit of a hit without Joe Burrow out there. Ryan's other starting quarterback, Jaden Daniels, is questionable for this week following a knee injury he suffered on Thursday night against the Packers. Yet to be seen whether he plays or not. So if I mean I'm under the assumption, I mean Burrow's definitely out this week. I'm gonna assume Jaden Daniels is out this week too, just based off the reporting I've seen so far. It's subject to change. That leaves Jake Browning and Joe Flacco as Ryan's quarterbacks, at least in the short term. I'm assuming Daniels is only gonna miss maybe 1 week, maybe two. Daniels also still could play, so it might not really matter. But yeah, Ryan's looking at a Flacco Browning quarterback room potentially for this week. And just kind of hope for the best, I guess. There's really not, really don't know what to make of that. I mean, Flacco is capable of putting up great fantasy weeks when the Browns just let him rip it. There's also Joe Flacco when he plays like himself and might just turn it over a lot and not get a lot of yardage. Fun thing is, if Joe Flacco and Jaden Daniels, is I have both of their backups with Marcus Mariota and Dylan Gabriel, respectively. So if Daniels doesn't miss any significant time, or if Flacco gets benched at any point in the near future, I do have both of those backups, which is fun. The next two injuries I'm going to talk about are Brock Purdy and Austin Eckler, both on Logan's team. Purdy is out for 2 to 5 weeks with turf toe and a shoulder injury. A little bit of ambiguous injury reporting from the 49ers. I don't really think that matters to Logan too much. And in fact, I think Purdy being injured and it not being any kind of like major injury, honestly, it is a kind of best case scenario for Logan because Purdy's going to be scoring 0 fantasy points and helps Logan lower that max points for. So I think Logan's probably okay with Purdy being injured. It's a good year for him to have that happen. The other injury is Austin Eckler, who tore his Achilles on Thursday Night Football. Austin Eckler was a fantasy football favorite of mine for years, like from 2019 to like 2022, 2023. Loved him so much as a pass catching running back. He was a staple of many corn teams for years. Unfortunate injury that probably is going to end his career at the age of 30. I mean, I just don't see. I mean, he already lost his explosiveness. I don't really see him coming back from Achilles injury at his age. Which is why I think Logan should be a little more proactive in selling some of his players who are older, just because, players are in the NFL are always one injury away from their career pretty much being over. And if you're in a non-competing year, especially with older players, I think it's wise to ship them off. And I think that's what put Trevor in a pretty successful situation for this year. I mean, that's what Sokol was doing at the end of last year. It's just something I think that if you're not contending, you should probably be shipping off anything of value that's not going to be in the long-term plans. That's my perspective, though. Obviously, everyone can do whatever they want, manage their team however they want. Up next, we have JJ McCarthy and Justin Fields for Beans. So JJ McCarthy, he's got a sprained ankle. I don't think I'm on video right now, but I have that in air quotes. I wonder if he's just being benched. I mean, he's been dreadful for seven out of the first eight quarters to start the year. Something I challenge you if you're listening to this. Next time you watch a Vikings game, JJ McCarthy cannot throw the ball to the left side of the field. Like if you look at a spray chart of where he throws the football, it is like very predominantly to the right side. And then I went back and watched a college breakdown of his like prospect film, and there's just like something about his mechanics where it's just harder for him to throw it to the left side of the field. I mean, if an average Joe can have that solved, I imagine NFL defensive coordinators have that solved as well. So that's something I want to challenge you the next time JJ McCarthy takes the field is just watch where he's throwing the ball. I think it's really fascinating. I mean, went to Michigan as a Viking, so fuck him. Don't really, not really rooting for his success. Justin Fields might be out this week with the concussion, so I know I bagged on Beans earlier this year for drafting Cam Ward when he's like, "Oh, you don't really need a quarterback though, Beans. You got Fields and JJ." Well, now Fields and JJ are both hurt, and Beans might be forced to start Cam Ward. So we'll see what happens there. JJ's backup is Carson Wentz, who is currently rostered by Mark. So that's another quarterback Mark could potentially start. I think Mark has five of the starting quarterbacks right now. And then Fields' backup is Tyrod Taylor, who I know someone Jake has. And so yeah, with these quarterback injuries, like with all of these quarterback injuries listed, I feel like I'm missing one. No, that's five. That's the right number. Anywho, it's not going to matter so much this week and the next week, but once these buys start happening and these quarterbacks are going to be missing time and these backups might have more value, I'll be really interested to see how that affects the trade market in the next few weeks because it seems like there's very few backup quarterbacks out on waivers right now. The last two injuries I want to touch up on are Jaden Reed for Chaz. I think Jaden Reed's expected to miss about 2 months with a broken collarbone. I mean, Chaz has other reinforcements. I don't even think Chaz started Jaden Reed this past week. Spartan, but also a Packer. Mixed feelings towards him. Uh, Hope he heals up. I mean, you don't want to wish injuries upon anyone. I know he had that foot injury going into the season too, so gives him time to have his body like fully recover. Good. Chaz's depth's gonna be a little tested early on, but I think he'll be fine for now. The other big one was Aaron Jones getting injured. He was placed on IR today. Blow to Sokol's team. Sokol has a little bit of depth though, so I don't think it's gonna be a too big of a blow. I'd have to look exactly at who he had on his bench this week, but he'll have someone he can start. But yeah, wheels up for Jordan Mason for the near future, I guess. I don't know if Stun's gonna start him because, like I said, with Stun's team, he has a lot of tough lap decisions to make every week. And we'll see if he finds a spot for Jordan Mason in that starting lineup. Yeah, Aaron Jones is going to be out minimum 4 weeks. I can't remember if it was a groin or a hamstring injury that's affecting him, but that will keep him sidelined at least 4 weeks, as I just said, repeating myself. And that is all I had for the GDFL podcast this week. Let me know how you think these injuries are going to shape the league. Yeah, like the big ones is I wonder what Ryan's going to do if he's going to try and replace Burrow at all. Just live with the reinforcements that he currently has. He is currently in second. I mean, it's only been 2 weeks, so who knows how he views his team. Though, like I said, this week he's playing against Levi, so there's a real chance he starts 3-0 here. Probably only needs to go about 3-7, 4-6 down the stretch, assuming he wins this week to make the playoffs. We'll see if he makes more of a push towards contending this year, unlike last year. It's a little too early to say right now, though. I mean, there's still a lot of the season left to unfold. Yeah, I think, yeah, like I said, the other big one is Beans. How I mean, I think Fields will be back within a week. I think Fields probably is out this week, but then is back the following because of a concussion. So, anywho, thank you all for listening to the GDFL podcast. Hope you learned something. Hope you found it enjoyable. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching if you're on YouTube. and I will see you next time. Love you all. Peace. If I can figure out how to end this recording.